Welcome to Thoughtful Planning, the place where real conversation, expert insight, and a touch of humor meet to turn our end-of-life uncertainties into self-assurance. I'm your co-host, Santiago, a history buff and a big kid at heart.
And I'm Honey, your guide through the intricate dance of planning with care and a whole lot of warmth. Every week, we're here to turn those intimidating "are we ready" moments into confident "everything is under control" moments. Today's journey is one you won't want to miss.
Hi, welcome to Thoughtful Planning. I'm Santiago. Today, I want to reflect on some significant events that drove Honey and I to plan for our end of life. It's a little speech that I've been working on for a class that I'm taking. I want to reflect on events that should have been a call for action for us, but we were always too busy to answer the call. For us, 9/11 was the first, but not the last shaping event, which should have pushed us into action, but didn't. Before I get started, I want to pose the essential question. What is it going to take for you to get started planning? So here we go. Have you ever felt so ready for a meeting that you're like, okay, what you got? I'm ready for anything. Notes are prepped, possible questions are anticipated and answered. Then, boom, somebody flies a plane into your building. Well, let me tell you just how unprepared we were at the Pentagon on 9/11 and how I have had ample opportunities in my life to get my stuff together and just fail to do so. So, as in the Army, we often say, no shit, there I was. Going to the office on a Tuesday after spending 10 days in Africa. My boss had ordered me to go in and file all the travel paperwork. Got to the office around 8:30. I talked to our admin assistant who was watching the news on her computer screen. She was watching all the events that were going on in New York. We were both in shock. I told her there's no way that was an accident as part of our conversation. So I got ready for our 9:30 meeting. My reports and notes were ready to be turned in, and I was ready to debrief the office on what we did in Africa. Our meeting was running in a little late because everything that was going on in New York, and we were standing around watching the news and all the events that were going on. Now, I was a junior officer in the office. I was a Army captain, an 03, and I was surrounded by lieutenant colonels or full colonels or their equivalent rank. Shortly after 9:30, 4 Bravo 747 shook. The windows rattled violently, and we saw this fireball just rise through the window. The Pentagon had been hit. One of the 06s, a naval captain, yelled, "We've been hit!" And she ran out of the office. It was surreal for me. In my mind, it took me back to those old cartoons where you see the Roadrunner take off and there's like this trail of dust right after her. The other officers that were there all sat down for the meeting. I kind of forcefully suggested that we prep to evacuate. I asked my boss if we should call for guidance from the front office. She agreed and called them. I told all the other folks in the office to go back, lock up the sensitive documents, get your hard drives put up, and suggested we should gather right outside the main office. I went back to my small little office, called my wife Honey. I left a simple message for her. I said, okay, I'm okay. Get Shelby, our daughter, from school, and I'll call you when I can. I can't remember if I told her I loved her or not, but that's how we normally end our calls. But at the time, I was in a different mode. I was just straightforward command mode. I made my way back to the main office. I looked for our evacuation route, and I couldn't find it. I asked our senior administrative assistant, Debbie, what was the quickest way out of the building? She said, well, there's the river entrance, and then there's the mall entrance. I looked at her and said, what is the quickest way out? She said the mall entrance, which is called that because it faces the National Mall. We all got out of the building safely, and we were walking out to our accountability point. Debbie commented about all the trash on the ground. Being a former maintenance officer, I told her, those are plain parts. I pointed out the braided lines, the color connectors, which are indicative of a gas turbine engine. At our rally point, I tried to call home to Honey. Couldn't get through. Nothing was getting out locally. No one could call home. So I did the next best thing, and I called my mom. She was super emotional. I asked her to calm down and to call Honey on three-way. There was no answer, but I left a message for her. Then I told my mom to get ready to make some additional calls, and I passed my phone around to all of my coworkers. As I was standing there, I vowed I'm never going to be this unprepared again. We had no evac plan, no communication plan, no plan at all for an attack on the Pentagon. And this is a building that's responsible for making plans for plans, and plan for plans. So take us 10 years later. I'm at summer camp at Fort Lewis, Washington with my cadets. I got a call from my younger brother. Now, we've never been really close, so a call from him was a bit unusual. I excused myself from everyone and took the call. He said, "Junior," that's what they call me. He said, "You need to come home. Dad's had a heart attack, and it's really bad." Next thing you know, my sergeant major's whispering in my ear, "Sir, you got to get up. Don't let the kids see you like this." I was on my knees. The sergeant major was on one side, another non-commissioned officer was on the other, and they picked me up to my feet. In less than 24 hours, I was back in San Antonio. I was really worried about my family at the time. So we went to my mom's house. Now, my father was a retired non-commissioned officer, and he knew the importance of being ready. But the issue was he was ready in his own way. He had documents here and there. Some were even in his sock drawer. I asked my mom to see everything. We laid out everything. We looked at the Army checklists and regulations and built a book to deal with the Army bureaucracy. In getting those documents in order, I realized without me and my experience as a casualty officer, Mom, my family would have been lost. Mom was grieving, so it was left for me to navigate through all the personal matters, the paperwork, and all the Army documents following my dad's passing. In all of this, I realized that I didn't even have my house in order. So in one of my phone calls home to Honey, I told her, we need to get our stuff together. Fast forward to July of 2016. Honey and I were on our last military move, and then I felt something right here in my throat. It really itched, and I couldn't swallow right. So I went to the doctor as soon as we arrived in San Antonio. It was a quick trip. It was supposed to be a quick trip to the doctor, but it escalated to an ER visit, and then a visit to the ear, neck, and throat clinic at BAMC, which is Brooke Army Medical Center. On the 25th of July, I was diagnosed with stage 4, T2, which means the tumor was between 2 and 4 centimeters, N2, which means the cancer was in 2 of my lymph nodes, M2, which means it had moved to 2 different locations, throat cancer. So stage 4, T2, N2, M2 cancer. Honey and I were not prepared for this diagnosis. And worst of all, I'd broken my vow about being prepared. I did have a basic will, basic power of attorney, and some basic medical directives, but they were 2 years old and really out of date. In 2017, I was declared cancer-free. We'd won the battle with cancer, and I vowed at that point, once again, to get ready. Then we find ourselves in June of 2023, almost 22 years from 9/11, almost 7 years out of my cancer fight. And we were getting ready to go on a cruise which would have taken us out of the country. And guess what? We hadn't touched our documents since 2014. What makes things worse is I'm a joint planner. I went to the Joint and Combined Warfare School to become a certified planner. Now, it wasn't because I was just not doing what I was supposed to do. We were what I like to call overburdened planners. We knew we had to plan, but we were just too busy with, well, life. Other things were just too important, and then we never got around to it. Well, in 2 weeks, we had an updated will, we had a trust, and we updated all of our medical directives. We shared our wishes with our family. We had an end-of-life planning talk with our kids and our loved ones. While we were on the cruise, we decided that we wanted to help others by sharing our story, our journey, as we ensured that we were ready for the end. We started this podcast, Thoughtful Planning, and we were going to start an accountability group soon to assist others on their journey to move from being an overburdened planner to a thoughtful planner. In my class at school, I often use the example of building a house when you're planning for college. I tell my cadets that the foundation is the most important part of any home, and building your home should be done in different stages. Now, as we plan for end of life, you can use the same model. Build your foundation with your foundational documents, which include a will, medical directives, and powers of attorney. You're going to need a couple of those. You should frame your house with supporting documents or a trust, and then finish your home with specific tools like your VA documents if you're a veteran, and your burial plans. This could also include little things like a bunch of pictures in order or a playlist for your wake, and then maybe even a plan for your pet to come visit you one last time before you go away forever. In our podcast, we always close by telling you to plan while you're clear of mind. In the end, what we really want to do is to help others gain peace of mind while they're clear of mind. Not planning puts a burden on other people. As Benjamin Franklin once said, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. As we ask ourselves the why in our planning, I came to realize that when I pass, I want Honey, my wife, my survivors, to be grieving and healing and not worried because I didn't have a plan. So that's just a little speech I've been working on. I got some kinks to work out. So one of the things that I'm still having an issue with myself is radiation sucks. My kids often ask me, what did it feel like when you were going through treatments? I tell them about me going to the hospital every day for radiation, once every 2 weeks for chemo, being put in the hospital a couple times, and not thinking I was coming out. When I describe the radiation to them, I tell them, think about getting a sunburn in the inside of your throat. I couldn't eat for a while. I couldn't drink for a while. I was getting everything through a feeding tube that went straight into my stomach. And at that point, when I was in that condition, I wasn't thinking about what I talked about just now about planning. I was just thinking about making it to the next day. And it was hard. But we made it. So when I look back at September 11th happened to us. I got put in the hospital twice in September. Didn't think I was coming out. The 29th of September was the day I rung my last cancer bell, which happened to be the radiation bell. And which is odd because that's 2 days after our anniversary which is the 27th. I'm so glad that we've done what we've done. I feel so much better prepared than I did even, in 9/11, when my father died, when I got sick, knowing that Honey has a plan. She's got a list of pictures that I put into a folder. I've started my songs to put them in a playlist for her. We're going through paperwork and documents and making sure that both of us are taken care of. So, to close out, as you think about the topic today, I want you to reflect back on that essential question we had. What's it going to take for you to start planning? For me, it took a plane flying into a building. It took my father dying. It took me getting stage 4 cancer in my throat. And that didn't even push me to the end. What pushed me over the top was getting ready to get on a boat and not being ready. So, until next time, remember, every chapter you write today shapes your legacy tomorrow. Thank you for joining me today on Thoughtful Planning.
And just like the vibrant hues of a setting sun, we're wrapping up another episode of Thoughtful Planning. Every shared story and insight is a step closer to turning uncertainty into celebrations of preparedness.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, remember that every surprise that comes our way is an opportunity to grow, adapt, and learn. Stay tuned for more stories, expert insight, and of course, a touch of wit in our next episode.
We're not just co-hosts, we're fellow travelers on this journey. For more information on additional resources, which will help you take the next step in planning, look for the link in the show notes for our membership. Join us next time for another episode of Thoughtful Planning. Until then, keep living, laughing, and loving every moment.